Hi, Jinevra.
Hi,
Hi, so nice to see you. Thank you for agreeing
you
to
too.
meet with me today.
It's
Appreciate
so
it.
nice. I'm so glad you asked me.
Yeah. So Jinevra Howard, I know Jinevra because she's a teacher on a course that I'm studying at the moment in inner relationship focusing. And I'm so excited about focusing at the moment because I'm just kind of learning it over the last, I only heard about it about a year ago. And so it's still relatively new to me. And I feel like it's like now I'm like, it's just the answer for everything. Because I'm so into it. So I really wanted to share it with anybody and everybody.
So
So I'm really happy that you agreed to come on today and talk to us about
absolutely. I also want to share it with anybody and everybody.
it. Yeah. I'd say there's like probably, like lots of different ways of looking at what it is. You
You know,
talk to a lot of people as well, and you teach it. So I'm sure you come across a lot of different even perspectives as to what focusing is and how it can be used. So just if you want to say something about what it is.
yeah. Well, inner relationship focusing is one way that focusing has been further developed.
Hmm.
And focusing the way we're using the word is sort of a different way of using the word than what you might normally think of as like, oh, I'm going to really focus in on this, you know?
Yeah.
It's more like if you have one of those old manual cameras where there's some like there's little dials that you turn
Hmm.
on a maybe on a telescope or a microscope. There's those little round things that you turn that
Hmm.
things into focus.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like it's a little closer to that, what
Yeah.
the word focusing, but it's kind of a funny word, isn't it, for what we're
Yeah.
doing?
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes I wish I had a different word, but I don't know. I haven't came up with a word, a better word either.
Same. I have to come up with a better one. Um, so in a way, it's sort of like you're going to the places where things are fuzzy and unclear,
Hmm.
and then you're staying in those places in a way that helps them come into more focus.
Yeah. And is that an important part, do you think? So you say you're kind of, in focusing, we call it the felt sense, isn't it? Like what's kind of out of focus, you could say, but we are still aware because we can't focus on something that we're not aware of. So there is
Okay.
some level of awareness, but it might be just a very kind of vague sense.
Right.
Um, but we can talk about that more in a minute, and I think that's really good. But I just wonder, is is that really what only what inner relationship focusing is? Because I often focus on what's very much in focus. And I feel like, okay, I'm going to use this focusing session to really, I kind of like to think of it as like shining my light on it and really allowing myself to feel whatever is here because I tend
Mhm.
to, like probably many people, we try to kind of avoid different things that make us feel uncomfortable. So focusing feels like an opportunity for me to say, okay, I'm not going to run away from whatever's here. I'm just going to let myself experience it.
Yeah, I think that's definitely like one of the many, many, many things you can use a focusing session to do.
Yeah.
So a lot can happen in a focusing session
Mhm.
for sure. You can specifically go to something that feels fuzzy or murky. But I'm curious what your experience has been because even when I go to something where I've thought about it a lot
Mm.
and maybe it seems like it's at the top of my mind and the top of my heart and my attention is right there,
Mm.
and yet if I invite it in a focusing session, sometimes it gives me an opportunity to see what's unclear about it,
Mm.
to kind of like invite the whole of it, including what I might not be aware
Mm.
of yet, or what maybe even hasn't come to consciousness yet.
Yeah.
Um,
And one
So
of the ways like that we kind of look at that is like you can expand on this, but when you enter into a focusing session, there's a kind of a framework that you're kind of looking from the self in presence, and
mm,
I think that's the kind of difference. Like as I go around my daily life, like I could be just busy, going from A to B to C to D. And I am aware of something, that's maybe making me feel awkward or uncomfortable, or maybe I'm totally engaged with some story, maybe I'm giving out like, I wish they didn't do this, or kind of like engaged. So I'm not particularly looking from the self and presence, or at least not consciously. So this time when I say, okay, I'm going to do focusing now, it's more conscious that I'm choosing to stay in presence or in self and
yeah.
presence.
Yeah, that's a big emphasis of inner relationship focusing. So self and
Mhm.
presence is a term of inner relationship focusing, and other branches of focusing don't talk about self and presence. They might have other words for something like it. How I'm familiar with that term is very much as Anne Weiser Cornell and Barbara McGavin have developed it in inner
Mm,
relationship focusing. And it describes the kind of environment, the kind of inner environment where our process can sort of naturally take its next steps.
mm,
So there's a concept in focusing of stopped processes, or when the organism, let's say the being, doesn't get what it needs in order to take its next natural step forward,
yeah.
it kind of creates a blockage. And self and presence kind of supplies what's needed in such a way
Mm,
that can unstop, and then the process knows its next steps. It's sort of like if you
yeah.
take a floater out of a river, the river knows what to do.
Yeah.
Right?
It kind of reminds me of um this is just for other people that are listening, and I don't know, you've probably heard these kind of ideas as well, and this is kind of the angle that I come into a lot of these conversations with. There's this kind of idea, in spirituality, and I'm not just saying it's an idea that like has no truth or something, but it's an
Yeah.
idea in spirituality that to just recognize your presence, like who you are beyond your body and your body story.
Mm,
That's kind of enough. And to just be that presence, then everything kind of resolves itself. And I think many people get stuck there. And I think that's the motivation for me to do this kind of whole podcast series.
mm,
And I have been in a place where I'm like, oh yeah, and I feel like that is totally enough. So I can see that, and
yeah.
I can see like the where it comes from and all, but I just think we're too complex for that to be true. And just
Mm,
how I see my own processes and all the complexities of my mind and my conditioning and places where is kind of stuck inside my being.
right.
Like it needs a little help. And it's not that the self, because it's kind of like saying, like, why would your self need help? But it's not, like the self in presence. It's all,
Right.
everything is coming from there. But in a way, um, I think I'm trying to explore like what does inner relationship focusing do that just being present doesn't do? You might like to say something on this, but what I've seen so far, sometimes it works and we're just present and things just come to the surface and they leave us. But often there's parts of us that are stuck and they keep coming back around and round again. So it somehow needs not just our light of attention, but it also needs something like this, like the connection. And it's like you're talking to. So that's the difference, I think, between, I don't really know about other types of focusing, but I think it's like you're actually making a connection with
Right.
different parts of yourself. So you're like reaching into like a hurt part of yourself or something and
Mm,
saying like, I hear you. And you're not trying to make a change or
right.
anything, you're just acknowledging that it's there. So I feel like it's like extending the love of presence um to the parts that in us that haven't yet been able to feel that love that is here.
Right. I
Something
love
like that.
when you say that. Yeah, say that.
Mm.
Yeah, I know. I think I'm following. Like, there's this sense that if I could just be here and be in contact with the flow of the universe, then all is well and all will be well, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But for me, I can't just be here all the
Mm.
time.
Yeah.
That's part of why I have this sign above my head that says now, and it's the stop sign.
Yeah.
I need
Yeah.
I need reminders, right?
Mm.
Because I'm a conditioned human being.
Mhm.
That's part of who I am here on the planet.
Mhm.
As a conditioned human being who's had the experiences that I've had, who has a nervous system and a endocrine system, and had a brain that was forming in response to my environment, my human environment,
Mm.
conditioned human environment,
Yeah.
right? And all of that is real as well, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm um I'm learning how to be in the world with all of this being true. That there
Yeah.
is some way that I have access to this flow state or this deeper truth or this non-dual
Mm.
being or something, that we have all these words that kind of don't quite cut it, but we sort of
Yeah.
know what we're pointing to.
Yeah.
And yet I have to poop and eat and have relationships with other conditioned human beings,
Yeah.
right? No matter
Yeah.
how much I can be in contact with presence or higher power or whatever. So to me, inner relationship focusing, I've described it as the technology of how to access um, what my body is holding.
Mm.
So the body keeps the score and the body
Mm.
remembers. And the body has these, what we call stopped processes, where when I was 4, something happened that is still stuck in there somehow, right? Or when I
Mm.
was 2, or when I was in the womb, or when I was 12, right?
Yeah.
It remembers in its own way.
Mm.
And so inner relationship focusing gives me a way to access those places where impressions and memories and experiences and impacts of experiences are still maybe being stored or frozen
Mm.
or whatever. And then I can be in relationship with those places or those, whatever you want to call them, parts.
Mm.
Um, and the way I'm in relationship with them is as self and presence.
Mm.
That's how we describe it, which means I'm in relationship with them with certain qualities, where I'm drawing on certain qualities that
Mm.
to me are me and beyond me. So self in presence,
Mm.
like my fullest capacity to have empathy for these places or
Mm.
these parts, and patience, right? Qualities like patience,
Yeah. Did you say
empathy.
they're your fullest capacity to be able
Yeah,
to be with them?
being with
Yeah.
what's in me from my fullest current capacity
Yeah.
to bring in these qualities. And by doing that, I'm building my capacity in these to be in presence or to have
Yeah.
access to these qualities.
Yeah. So do you think that in a kind of, if somebody is engaging in a relationship focusing, do they need to use energy to try to find self and presence? Or is it just, that's why I liked what you said there, like to kind of use your fullest capacity, or to just like be in relationship with this thing to your fullest capacity of like the empathy that's here.
Yeah, what is available to me now,
Yeah.
right? And that's enough to start,
Yeah.
right? It just is.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think trying works. I
No.
don't think kind of like really push yourself to have more compassion in this moment than you do.
Exactly.
It hasn't worked for me.
Yeah.
Kind of talk about changing by not trying. That
Yeah.
really about like, we all have enough capacity to keep company with something for 1 second.
Yeah.
Right?
That's good. I like that.
Yeah.
And I like that question in focusing. I don't know if we've done it yet in our course, but in a session that I was in with somebody else, somebody asked me how, let me think of the question. What way does like this want you to meet it? I can't remember what way they worded the question now. But
Yeah.
like what kind of contact? Yeah, what was something like that? Like what type of contact does this
Right.
part of you want? So
Right.
you're not waiting for it to talk, but you just kind of ask the question and then you're just kind of open to the answer coming or something like that.
Mhm. I love
And
the metaphor that I think it's a metaphor that Anne Weiser Cornell uses of you're walking by the edge of the woods and you kind of see this little movement in the woods and
mm,
catch a glimpse of like a furry little creature.
mm,
And you kind of sense like, how can I be so that doesn't run away?
yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Like sensing what kind of contact would be okay for it from me right now.
mm,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, so it's kind of being, it's again, it's that like somehow the image keeps coming to me of like almost like you don't even have to do this, but this image is just going like you're kind of gently just putting your hand out. And of course, the thing might not want that. So not even that. But somehow
You'll
that's
be able
coming.
to tell. There's kind of a way that you realize, oh, maybe it wants me to put my hand out toward it. And then I try that and it kind of jumps away. And you're
Yeah.
like, oh, that was too much. Okay. Now I
Mm,
have more information. I'll hold my hand here.
yeah.
So if we can practice, and this is a capacity that seems to be inherent if we
Mm,
learn. Some of us naturally do it more than others, but we can learn it.
yeah.
It's not like some people can do it and some people can't. We can learn how to sense
Yeah.
in this way, right?
Yeah, because I'm just thinking like it's all us, we're calling it inner relationship as if it's like I'm in relationship with something else. But in reality, what it is and what we know it is, it's like we're really it's all us. It's all
Yeah.
like different parts of ourselves. So it's not really in communication. We're actually entering into communion with. So you can't get it wrong. And you can't, if it's not saying anything, because it can be like that sometimes you can kind of put the question out there and it doesn't say anything. So it can just be like, okay, I'm noticing that it's not saying anything. Like
Yeah.
it's not necessarily wrong. Like maybe it doesn't want to say anything.
Yes, I've definitely found there were parts that it took a while to build it. What it felt like was it took a while for them to trust me. Like
Yeah.
just because I show up after 45 years of ignoring them and be like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm here now.
Yeah.
Especially if I show up being like, I'm here now and let's get to the bottom of why you're causing so much trouble in my life. Like
Yeah.
if someone came to me and said that, I would be like, bye-bye, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
Right. So this way
That's
we
true.
are kind of cultivating a relationship with these aspects or parts of ourselves.
Yeah.
And and it's kind of, they know what they need. And so
Yeah.
hopefully like any foundation of any relationship, we're really sensing the other being, let's call
Mm,
it. No, yeah,
mm,
it's
yeah.
us. What is this? But it might be a younger me. It's usually a younger me.
Yeah.
So this me who I haven't been in contact with for a long time,
Mm,
in this way, there's a way that it knows would be right for me to be in contact with it.
yeah.
So if it's not ready, it won't share very much. But by not sharing very much, it's letting me know that all it's ready for is for me to just be there.
Yeah.
Right. And if I stay and I come back and I'm willing to be with it in the way that I sense is right for it,
Mm.
things start to move naturally. Like it starts to be willing to have more contact or deeper contact.
Yeah.
Maybe even show me things or tell me things.
Yeah. So in the beginning, you started to say, and then I changed the flow. But like you started to say that like in our relationship, focusing is when we're kind of sensing out to the edge, where
Mm,
we're not quite sure.
mm.
Um, so what, I don't know if this is the right question. You can kind of change the question if you want. Um, but what would be the difference between sensing out to the edge where you're not quite sure and just looking at something that's very much in focus already, or maybe just a little bit out of focus, but like really kind of going out to the edge? Is there a difference?
I'm sure there's about a billion ways to answer that. um, there
What
are
will your
some,
way be today?
yeah, what will my way be? I'm just thinking my experience of something that feels very in focus is often that there's a way in which I know a lot about this thing.
Like, do you mean there's lots of ideas around it and all?
Maybe I've
Kind of.
had, like, I don't know if you ever have this feeling, like I've had every thought that it's possible to have about this
Yeah.
situation,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And now I've had them all about 6 times.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Hmm.
And so sometimes I'll go into focusing with something like that, where I think thinking about this has hit a wall. I'm not getting
Hmm.
anywhere by thinking about
Hmm.
this,
Hmm.
right? I like to say, like, self-knowledge avails us a limited amount. And then
Yeah.
we, you
Mm-hmm.
know, doesn't necessarily lead to profound transformation.
Mm-hmm.
It can be immensely
Mm-hmm.
helpful in certain places and at certain times. But so there's times where, if that's what we mean by something feels very in focus, is like I've laser focused my prefrontal cortex on this thing, you know,
Mm-hmm.
then sometimes going into focusing for me is like saying, okay, but what is the rest of my whole being and all of my other
Mm-hmm.
possible ways of, understanding, knowing, perceiving have
Mm-hmm.
to offer about this? Sort of like I'm inviting, like, instead of what do I already know about this,
Mm-hmm.
what else is, like, there must be so much more to this, right?
Mm-hmm.
What else is there that I'm missing with just the way I've been looking at it or focusing on it?
Yeah. So it's just kind of opening you up to the possibility of more, and
Yeah.
almost like if you were looking at something with your eyes, like if you're looking at something right in front of you, you only see this, but if you just kind of like soften your vision and maybe
Mm.
even allow that to go further back, you can actually see more. It's like that, isn't it? You're not focused on one thing, you just kind of open your vision, you can actually sense more. Even like if you use your eye vision as an analogy.
Yeah. And it might transpire
Yeah.
that this thing is connected to all these other things that you would never have realized it's connected to,
Mm.
but for being in relationship with it in this way where it can reveal more about
Yeah.
itself to you.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
kind of reminds me of, I'm often, I don't know if amazed is the right word, but I kind of feel like just anytime I think I know something, it kind of, not even just in relationship to focusing, but like just in life in general, when I think I know something, it kind of like blocks me, or like it kind of gets you stuck,
Uh-huh.
either in your own personal things or in relationship with someone else. Like there can be conflict, in ideas. Like if you're not just a
Yeah.
kind of, as soon as you kind of think you know something.
Yeah, I
So,
like you say on your website, like, when we go beyond ideas, or when
mm,
we stop talking about ideas, then we're talking about what's there. And I was thinking about that because, we can get into such a mess with arguing about just arguing, right, with language.
yeah.
And meanwhile, like, words are pointing to meanings, and
Mm,
many of us have and meaning is so complex and contextual and ever changing, right?
Yeah.
So to really get bogged down in, but you said, you
Yeah.
said you loved me.
Yeah.
If you really loved me, you would not forget to take out the trash,
Yeah.
or whatever. I'm using a silly example, but yeah. So I think of that when you say, when you think you know something, like, I think I know I'm right about what it means to love someone.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know for sure that you don't love me, even though you say so. Now you're a liar because you're saying you love. So it can be, I think,
It reminds me of when I was like, sorry. It reminds me when I was like breaking up with someone one time and I really genuinely felt so much love for them. And I really do love them and I still do love them. But like I just knew that it was the right thing that I needed to break up with them. So they were like, well, you're breaking up with me, so you obviously don't love me and you're obviously lying. Which is totally understandable. I can see why they would think that. And like I
right.
can see why you would think they would think that they know that. But like it's definitely not true.
Not true that you didn't feel love for them.
Yeah.
But it's true that they didn't feel that you loved them.
Yeah, exactly. That's also true. Yeah.
So yeah, I think we can get stuck when we just use words or we try to fix meanings and pin them down. Obviously that has a utility in the world and would be hard to navigate practical life without it. And yet it's helpful. It's been helpful for me to be in this focusing way of understanding life and being as more of a process than a set of fixed entities or ideas. More of an ever-flowing process. It's good to kind of keep that in mind, I think, as we do utilize language and ideas to navigate the world.
Yeah. And what do you find focusing does, like, because you're kind of saying like an ever flowing process, like life is kind of becomes like an ever, well, you didn't say exactly becomes, but it's kind of like an ever flowing process. So just in your experience and maybe what you see, even with other people or what anyone has told you, what kind of just being in this way of looking inside and how does that impact your way of being in life?
It's a beautiful question. There's I think there's two main answers that I have for that, or two main things that I've seen happen for me and others. Is, I talked about those stopped processes, these stuck places in ourselves. That as we keep them company and build this inner relationship with them from self and presence, from our ever growing capacity to have these qualities that create an environment where things can unstop and take their next steps. My experience has been that old wounds heal. Parts of myself that were maybe felt exiled or unwanted or condemned now like welcome. So even if they're still holding on to pain or memories, they don't feel so alone. So there's this way that I feel more coherent and integrated with all the parts of myself. I think like what we sometimes call shadow work naturally happens. And critical parts that we think of as like trying to protect us at some point, but they can turn really nasty and say really things or things to our body, constrict us in different ways. Being with them and getting how maybe worried or scared they are and building those relationships help them relax, it feels like. Or maybe redirect. Like I've gotten better at boundaries. And I think it sort of has felt to me like some of those parts that were just doing their best with their limited strategy to keep me safe, have now come up with ways to use their energy to help me have clearer boundaries that support me in the world, right? So there's lots of ways like that I guess I would put an umbrella that says like integration of parts happens.
Yeah.
My being more cohesive.
Yeah. So would that lead to, when I hear you saying all that, my interpretation, because I can't help interpreting it into my language, is that like you would just feel more at peace with yourself, so rather than, what I'm sure most people are familiar with, that we have different kind of conflicts and in being. So instead of that happening on many different levels, it's like, oh, and even if it's still there, maybe it could be still there. You can maybe say something about that if you want. It could be still there, but you're kind of, it's just like, oh, okay, this here is here, but you're kind of more at peace with it being here rather than feeling like, okay, you really shouldn't be here right now. You need to go. I can't be at peace if this part is showing up or something. But I get the sense that you're saying you're more just comfortable to just be with what is here. Is it like that?
That's absolutely true. And I can say a few more sentences about it. I used to have parts that seemed like that were fighting with each other about things all the time. So in inner relationship focusing, we call them tangles, where you have like this whole, it feels like this whole, knotted up ball of stuff around some topic or some area of your life. So there's some that are saying, oh, you never should have done that. I can't believe you did it again. You've been, meditating for 10 years and yet here you go again doing the same thing. And another part's like, whoa, leave me alone. Stop yelling at me. And another part's, there's sometimes a lot of parts that are kind of, and when I'm what we call identified or merged with parts, sometimes it feels like I'm just like, there's this metaphor I came across in another field of study, but I like it a lot, where like there's a bunch of little guys and I'm trying to drive a cart, like, when you had the horse and buggy. So I'm trying to like direct this horse and get somewhere, but I'm not here. I'm all these parts, and each part is like, no, it's my turn to drive. No, it's my turn to drive. No, it's my turn to drive. So we're just driving all over the place and the horse is confused and everything's chaotic. That's kind of what it was like for me a lot before I really started doing some of this work. And so as we build relationships with each part from self-presence or as self-presence, self-presence becomes this big container where all these little parts of me can live, but they don't get to drive the bus, right? I can listen to them and say, oh, I hear you. You'd really like us to do that. Or you'd really like, you're worried about this happening, but I still get to choose what direction the whole, body and system goes in more and more. And that's part of what the practice of inner relationship focusing helps with. It helps me go from I'm completely identified or merged with this feeling or idea to I am here and something in me feels this way or believes this. And I can keep it company and listen to it. But I start to experience myself more and more as the one that can be present for all of the different feelings or beliefs or ideas.
Yeah, I think that's really important what you said. You said like you start to experience yourself more as the kind of container for everything. Because I think what happens a lot in, let's say, spirituality is that there's this kind of idea that once you recognize your self and presence, really, they use different words, but once you recognize that, then like that's the end. There's nothing else to do, and I know that. So then there's all those other parts that want to drive the bus, like you say. They want to drive the bus and they say, yeah, but that's not me. But in my experience, what I see is that, yeah, we kind of know it and you can know it really deeply even, but yeah, it, I think on some kind of energetic or cellular level, it's not really experienced. And I think we're not really at peace, really, if we're not experiencing it. Like to just know it is not enough. We don't
Yeah.
have to, like, but I mean, it's just like if we want to. And I think many people want to, we want to feel peaceful. It's kind of a natural kind of human instinct or something for many people. I mean, maybe not everybody.
Right. We call it freedom from suffering. It's what
Yeah.
motivates many of us to be on some kind of a path,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Of healing or spiritual development or whatever.
Yeah.
And I agree that I can have an experience of my oneness with all, let's
Mm,
say, or
yeah.
however you would describe it.
Mm,
But for me, in some ways, I like the idea of that's how I understand born again, and in a way,
mm,
like, oh, now I'm really aware in some deep way of my identity in a way I
mm,
wasn't before, like this
yeah.
pure identity that I have, maybe,
Mm,
or
yeah.
experience, or whatever word works for you. But how do I live now?
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
if I'm still getting merged with parts, which is very natural when you've had trauma or conditioning, which we all have,
Yeah.
right? We have deep patterning neurologically and in our
Mm,
systems, right?
yeah.
So we will, um, these things will happen. I think a lot of people probably have stories about people who seemed very spiritual and then they flip out and do something and you think, whoa, what's
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
happening?
Yeah.
um,
And I think
yeah,
also many people, like I know some people, I'm thinking of someone in particular, and like they like to have, and I'm sure I've seen like the highest spiritual ideals for yourself, you know, it's like, oh yeah, I'm like so spiritual now. But then like something happens or something, you know, like you have an argument with someone and
right.
then you're like, ah, and then after you're like, Jesus, that's not like how I want to behave, you know, like someone else came on there and like drove the bus. And it's not always
Absolutely.
as extreme. Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
always as extreme as that. Like, you know, sometimes it's, you know, well, it can be as extreme, but in a different story, you know, like maybe some other parts that maybe just feel different ways, but they haven't really been explored or allowed to be um expressed or whatever it is. So they're driving the bus. And I
Right.
think we can kind of just use spiritual ideas to say, oh yeah, I see that, but that's not me, so it's fine.
Right.
You
Yeah, I like
know.
what you said there when we just saying that's not me,
Mm,
to me feels it feels a little bit violent
yeah,
or because it is me.
yeah,
It's not all of me,
yeah,
but it is something in me that's probably hurt and suffering.
yeah,
So who's free from suffering if I'm just saying none of that's really me?
yeah,
Not even real. You one that lashed out at the person I love in
yeah,
anger, said things. That wasn't me.
mm,
Somebody did that.
yeah,
I think it was me.
yeah,
He merged with something in me that's hurting and that's
yeah,
feeling like it needs to, the way I see it, it feels like it needs to get my attention and I'm not paying attention to it. And so it's going to make me pay attention by doing something that will
yeah,
get my attention. And then if I just say, no, that's not me, that feels, that feels violent to me toward that.
yeah.
All,
I like that kind of word. It does feel violent. I usually think of it as like it feels unloving. It's kind of the
yeah,
same, but violent. I like violent. It's very like, even in language, it sounds very harsh. Like it
it
feels
is
like a
hard.
shock, and it is. It is
Yeah, it
harsh.
is hard.
Yeah.
And then I've learned that through focusing, because as I get to know these parts and realize how hurt many of them feel,
Mm,
how much pain they're in, and how alone they've felt,
mm,
I that helps me develop more empathy and true self-compassion, right?
yeah. Mm,
To really get how long some of them have felt totally alone and like they're holding something very heavy and scary.
yeah.
Um, it's different for everyone, but everyone can get to know themselves in this way and find out what's really going on for these parts that jump into the driver's seat and try to drive the bus over a cliff or run into the building with it, or, go to the ice cream store and buy 12 and eat them all.
That reminds me of me. That's something that I could do. I could do using focusing for.
Right?
I tend to just like, I don't know, something happens inside and then it's like, okay, I need to eat lots of chocolate immediately.
Oh yeah. I call food the final frontier.
So I wonder if we could look at focusing by yourself as opposed to focusing with a companion. And I don't know exactly what, but I don't really want to say which is better, but I haven't got a lot of great questions going to my mind. But just to maybe compare the two, and what's your experience?
What's your
What's mine? What's mine? My experience with it so far is I think focusing in a way like started to happen naturally for me in the beginning, like an aspect of it at least. And then I was telling somebody about it. So then they told me about focusing and I got Anne Weiser Cornell's book. So I started to do focusing, or at least I thought I was doing focusing by myself, but I would only do it for about 5 minutes or 10 minutes or something. And it was a very kind of good 5 minutes. Like it would usually, something would move very quickly and like it would feel like release, but then I'd be like, okay, I'm finished now. So I find that working with a companion, this is where the word kind of blurs, but it keeps me more focused. It keeps me with the process.
Right.
And I think even though those 5 minutes can be good, I think there is benefit to kind of staying with the process in a more, I don't know, I don't really like this word, but in a kind of, I don't know, maybe you can think of a better word, but in a kind of a controlled way. Not really controlled, but in a more, there are steps to follow and you kind of can lead in and ask questions. It's very, I don't know, a more oriented process or something. I don't know. I can't think of the right words, but it's more in a framework. And you kind of go in and come out and it feels like you've crawled through a tunnel or something rather than just like a quick, I don't know. And I think from my perspective, I like it better, like to be with someone. And also one more thing before you say them was that I kind of feel like a lot of my stuff, and maybe everybody's, but a lot of my issues are kind of relational issues. Like I had a word in a dream recently called it my love wounds.
Yeah.
Which I thought was quite good. So my love wounds are all because of like things that happened with like my parents or something. So therefore I feel like the presence of somebody when I'm experiencing that is very healing. So of course my own presence is here, but having somebody else's presence, even though they're the same presence really, but it kind of strengthens me to stay in my own presence.
Absolutely.
Something like that.
Beautiful. Yeah, I would say almost the same thing, really. I think so the way we teach focusing and interrelationship focusing is as a partner practice, although Anne teaches other courses about focusing alone, I believe, but we mostly do partner practice. And it's for, you gave two good reasons. One is the structure. It's like going to a meditation group because I'll meditate for 40 minutes, whereas if I'm at home doing it myself, maybe 10 or 15 usually, right? So there's something about that. Just I have an appointment with this person, we've agreed on these times, and we're kind of, especially as you're learning, we're kind of respecting the steps or the process or the framework that we're using. And we both are kind of holding to that together. So there's a power in that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing you said, I think has been really big for me, was kind of an unexpected plus of learning this way of focusing. It was, I wasn't expecting it, but the partnered practice, when you find a partner whose presence feels good. I have partners like that who I've been practicing with now regularly for multiple years. And there is a way that self and presence gets stronger, bigger, more powerful when there's two beings, two selves in presence.
Yeah.
Space, right? In the relational space. And in some ways, I think what most of our parts were missing that had those processes get stopped was a kind of relational presence.
Yeah.
We just needed someone to respond to us or receive us in a particular way.
Yeah.
Usually looks like self and presence, right? It looks like accepting, empathic, strong, but loving, kind of energy. And so when we feel that from our companion, it helps us feel it for our own parts, I think, and helps us stay in self and presence ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, has been deeply healing for me. I think that's what has made this practice so powerful, and for me, really leading to transformative, lasting, positive change. Where it's not like I feel like I've turned into someone else. It's like I've finally discovered how to be myself in the fullest way, which is ongoing, which is unfolding, because it's a process. So I'm not going to get to the island where it's all done.
Yeah.
And I'm all perfect.
Yeah.
I know what to do if an old pattern flares up or somebody grabs the wheel, drives the bus for a while, and say, oh, I'm going to go have my focusing session. The great thing with regular partners is it's like, okay, on my calendar, I only have to wait 2 more days, or I can reach out to someone and say, can you keep me company?
Yeah.
And then I have something I can do. Now you can go in and do a little kind of like spot focusing on your own.
Oh, yeah.
And I do that. Like you kind of talked about, like dipping into the, I think of it sometimes as like underground caverns, I'm not going to go exploring them all, but you can kind of drop into one and say, oh, hello.
Yeah.
I see you trying to get my attention, and I'm just going to just say hi and then let you know I'll be back when I have more time and a partner, something like that.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I do it. I know there are people who focus alone and have incredible productive focusing sessions, but I'm very much more oriented toward wanting that companion.
And I also think just having a meeting with somebody, I don't know when I thought this, but I just think whenever there's somebody else involved, I'm much more likely to do it. I think I thought it just before this meeting. Actually, I was coming because, like, the way if you make an arrangement with someone, you're gonna do it usually. But if it's just an arrangement with yourself, if you don't feel like it, you're tired or sick. So I was feeling a bit tired, before I came to this meeting. I was like, oh, I was a bit tired all day. Like, it's like, okay, fine. And I know it'll be fine when I come. And then I was thinking, yeah, I'm so grateful, like, for actually just for doing things with other people, or I'd never do anything.
I know what you mean. I have one focusing partner, and I would say like at least half the time we show up and we're like, we chat a little bit because we've become friends. And then one of us says, well, should we focus?
Yeah.
The other one says, I guess we should. We made a rule that we, at least every other time we meet, we have to focus, even if we don't. We often feel like, no, I don't really feel like it. And then we do. And every single time afterwards, we say, gosh, that's really good stuff. Like we should do that more often.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I wonder for somebody who's maybe listening to this podcast and it's their first time hearing about focusing or in a relationship focusing, and they're like, "Ooh, what is this?" So I would hope that this talk has given at least a little information. But what would you suggest that they do to maybe find out more about it? Like,
Yeah.
I guess
Well,
there's a few different things.
I'm a big fan of the inner relationship focusing. There are other ways of
Mm,
learning focusing, but this is
mhm.
what's so well for me. So
Yeah.
I would direct them to the Focusing Resources website, which is
Mm,
focusingresources.com.
mm,
And there's a lot of free resources there. They
mm,
can, depending on where they're at and what they're ready for,
mm,
get a weekly tip that kind
mm.
of tells them a little bit more. They can sign
Yeah.
up to watch some focusing sessions
Mm,
and get a sense of it that way,
yeah.
or their self-guided classes, different,
Yeah.
courses, and also the live classes. That's, one way to learn more. Or,
Mm.
Anne has written a few books that are pretty good
Yeah.
to look at. Yeah.
Yeah. And I also wonder about, I know there's like, so we're doing it's called Path to Lasting Change. So I think that's about, I'm not even sure, even though I'm in it, but like, I think that's about really doing focusing for yourself, isn't it? Like with a companion. And
Yeah.
then there's some kind of 2-year course that people can do where they're learning how to be
Oh, yeah.
something. So maybe
Yeah.
you'll say, so there's some difference where I think that they maybe do focusing with people who don't know anything about focusing.
Right.
So then I wonder, would that be a good way? Well, I mean, it could be a good
Yes.
way to have some contact with what it's like to do
Yes.
focusing when you don't know anything about it,
I can
to
even share a link. Um, Session link. Let me just find it. Well, maybe I can't find it, but there is
Mhm.
uh, a way to sign up to be paired with one of the certification students
Oh yeah.
to have some sessions with them. So
Yeah.
those would be like guided sessions. So if you
Yeah.
don't have the time, or this isn't a good time in your life to take, an 18-week class to
Yeah.
learn to do this yourself step by step, but
Mm,
you want to have the experience of what focusing is like and how it can
mm,
help you. You can sign up for guided sessions or facilitated sessions where somebody is there to kind of give you invitations and help you follow your own process and
yeah.
develop a relationship with what you find.
Yeah.
And there's somewhere on the website, there's somebody that
Yeah.
you can email and get
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah.
For sure.
And do you do that for people or not?
I do. Yeah, I
You
do
do
that.
that as well. Okay. And
And anyone can email me if they want to just talk about focusing. I'm
yeah.
super nerdy about it and love to share it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Um, so are there any other questions I should ask you? Or anything else that you'd like to share before we
Um,
finish?
gosh, I would just say, like, I, for years and years and years, like so many of us, was kind of searching and looking at, spirituality and psychology and physical ways to help myself feel better, and, freedom from
Yeah.
suffering, right?
Yeah.
Is what I wanted,
Yeah.
and enjoyment of life and feeling of fulfillment.
Mm,
Um, and I would say that this practice of inner relationship focusing is so simple in some ways,
mm,
and yet it makes everything else work better.
mm.
So I still do other things, but they work better.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like the foundational being human skill set that I never learned. That's how
Yeah.
it me. Like, it's like, oh, this is how I can really learn to feel myself, trust myself, help myself. And that helps me be more available to others in a more helpful way. So I know some people can feel like, oh, that's very navel gazy, but I don't think it is. I think it's really like taking response. It's sort of like cleaning my house.
Yeah.
Keep my house clean so that other things can happen, and from love for my space and my environment, right?
Yeah.
So it's a very profound self-care practice for me that is the foundation of how I can be of service in the world. And what else was I going to say about it? I don't know. Maybe that's enough.
That was pretty good. Felt like they were my words too.
I feel like we could trade off and the same point would come out of it.
Yeah, exactly. And someone was asking me once, someone that I got paired up with in the class, I don't know why, but we ended up talking about spirituality. So we were talking about spirituality and they were like, yeah, but like, why are you doing focusing then? Because at that time I was with my spiritual guru in India. So we started talking about what his teachings are and all this kind of stuff. So he was saying, so like, why are you doing focusing? Like it doesn't sound like you need it. And I was like, oh no, I do. I was like, because it's like, that's kind of one aspect of life, it's like you're recognizing your divinity. And people think that's kind of like the end of, because it's like we're trying to escape suffering by recognizing our divinity. But that's not what it does. Really, we need to look towards, you said something like this as well in different words, but like, it's like we're looking towards our humanity then and embracing our humanity and learning how to walk as a human.
Right.
So I feel like that's what I need. It's not to recognize that I'm divine, I'm always, that divine part is here and that's good. And I think it's important, I'm not definitely not ditching it. It's huge. It's huge. It's a big, wonderful thing. But like what is needed here, and I just feel like it's probably needed a lot, is like to just see who is this like body, mind, person, and all the different aspects of her, and how can I just like let her really, I feel like how can I love all the parts of her so she can be whoever she's supposed to be. See, it's kind of the same as what you said, but in a different way.
Yeah. I think I like this idea that somehow I'm here to be me, or I would be someone else. Exactly. So how do I be me? Well, part of it might be seeing that I am one with all living beings, or that there's some divine current flowing through me.
Yeah.
That's part of what it is to be me. And part of what it is to be me is to take care of this body that I have been provided, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who I am.
Yeah.
Best I can. And part of it is probably to help myself, thrive given the conditions that help to shape my patterning, that conditioned, reality. That's also reality, right?
Yeah.
Like I want the full human experience.
Yeah.
I want to just try to
multi-dimensional level.
Yeah. I want to be human among other humans and animals in the world, even though it's hard. And I would maybe go, it's funny because I used to think, or else I would just go join a nunnery and, retreat from the world. But I understand it's very hard to get away from the other nuns, even if you join a nunnery.
Yeah. You're just going to have the same issues in there.
Yeah, there's still bowls to wash and, bodies that get old and we are. So focusing has helped me be a human in the world for sure.
Yeah, and that's very important. And it's also helping me to embrace my humanity.
Well, thank you so much again for inviting me. I enjoyed spending time with you and getting to talk about all these things that I love to be reminded of.
Yes. Thank you, Jennifer. I really appreciate your time.